Chapter 12, The History of Life. 12.1 is the fossil record. Key concept: specific environmental conditions are necessary in order for fossils to form. Fossils can form in several ways. One of them is permineralization, which occurs when minerals that are carried by water are deposited around a hard structure. A natural cast forms when flowing water removes all of the original tissue, leaving an impression. If you notice this picture right here, this one is significant for us here in Missouri because that's our state fossil, the crinoid. This was a sea lily that lived in the ancient oceans that covered North America. And at the bottom, you can see here the stem. If you were to break that off into little segments, those are the crinoid fossils that we find throughout the state. Trace fossils record the activity of an organism. You see footprints here. We can see where this organism walked. Amber preserved fossils are organisms that become trapped in tree resin that hardens after the tree is buried. This is how we have record that dinosaurs had feathers. We still don't know what they sounded like, but we have a better picture now of what they looked like. Preserved remains form when an entire organism becomes encased in materials such as ice. Specific conditions are needed for fossilization. Having hard parts such as bone and rapid burial are key. The Mount Vesuvius eruption that occurred in Italy rapidly buried lots of hard things such as pottery and people, and their bones were preserved so we can see how life was in that time. Only a tiny percentage of living things become fossils, which is kind of astounding when you think we know of all these different types of dinosaurs due to the fossils that are left, but if only a small percentage of living things, how many things came before us? Radiometric dating provides an accurate way to estimate the age of fossils. Relative dating, not dating your cousin, but relative dating estimates the time during which an organism lived. You are comparing the relative date of that organism to the placement in the layers of rock that surround it. Scientists can infer the order in which the species existed. Remember, the older stuff's at the bottom, newer stuff's at the top. If we were to look at a carbon-12 and a carbon-14 nucleus, the carbon-12 has 6 neutrons and 6 protons, whereas a carbon-14 isotope has 6 protons and 8 neutrons. It doesn't change the identity of the carbon atom itself, only its weight. Radiometric dating uses decay of those unstable isotopes. Isotopes are atoms of an element that differ in their number of neutrons. Isotopes are atoms that will decay over time. They're unstable. Their nucleus is very large and it wants to fall apart because there's not enough electronegativity holding it together. The half-life is what we use to describe the amount of time it takes for half of that isotope to decay. So using that, we can determine the age of something based off of the amount of parent material, or the original isotope, to the daughter product, which is what's left after the decay has occurred, the nitrogen-14 here. 12.2, the geologic timescale. Key concept: the geologic timescale divides Earth's history based on major past events. Index fossils are another tool to determine the age of rock layers. Just like an index in the book tells you where to go to look for things, the index fossil can provide a relative age of a rock layer. Those index fossils exist only during specific time spans, and they must be widespread. They occur in large geographic areas. Index fossils include fusulinids and trilobites. We know that they were found in many places, but they were only found during a short relative amount of time in history. The geologic timescale organizes Earth's history. The history of Earth is represented within this timescale. Obviously, Earth's history is huge, so we have to break it up into pieces. The Precambrian time makes up the largest chunk of Earth's history. This whole right-hand column here, that's all Precambrian. That's before life existed on Earth. The Archean, down in the right bottom here, that Archean time period was a time when Earth was much like the moon or Mars. Nothing survived. There was no plant life. There were no oceans at that time. The Proterozoic, we started seeing oceans. And from that spawned the Cambrian time. In the oldest of the Paleozoic, the Cambrian time, we saw an explosion of life. And throughout Earth's history, we've seen the Ordovician, Silurian, Devonian. Different ages signify different things. There were ages of reptiles. There were ages of fish. The Mesozoic, that middle time of life, represents the time of the dinosaurs, the Triassic, the Jurassic, the Cretaceous. That's when we found all of the dinosaurs that survived. At the end of each of these periods, there was some kind of significant event signifying the Jurassic period was over, the Cretaceous period took over. Now, the movies that we watched when we were kids, they lie to us because those dinosaurs, they didn't exist all at the same time. The Brontosaurus and the Tyrannosaurus, they all existed during different times. And we're not talking by decades or even centuries, millions of years difference. We exist in the Cenozoic over here in the yellow, the Quaternary period, the most recent time. We divide the geologic time scale into eras, and they generally last tens to hundreds of millions of years. They consist of 2 or more periods. There are 3 eras, the Cenozoic, the Mesozoic, and the Paleozoic. Periods last tens of millions of years. They're most commonly used units of time on the time scale. You may remember seeing some of the posters in the classroom, the Earth Science kids. They took an in-depth look into each of those periods. They're associated with rock systems. And an epoch, which is another subset of those periods, lasts several million years. Eras are broken into chunks called periods. Periods are broken into chunks called epochs. Today, we are found up here at the very top, we are found in what is called the Phanerozoic Eon, Cenozoic Era, the Quaternary period, and the Holocene epoch.